I thought I knew what heartbreak felt like until the night before my wedding, when my phone buzzed at 11:47 p.m. with a voice note that wasn't meant for me. Hey, everyone watching this, before I tell you what happened that night, I need you to do me a favor. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from, because what I'm about to share with you could happen to anyone, anywhere. And if my story helps even one person avoid what I went through, then every tear I shed will have been worth it. My name is Sarah, and 6 months ago, I was living what I thought was a fairy tale. I was 29, engaged to a man I'd loved for 3 years, and planning what was supposed to be the most beautiful day of my life. Our wedding was set for October 15th at the Riverside Gardens in Sacramento, the same venue where my parents had their reception 32 years ago. Everything was perfect. Too perfect, as it turned out. Marcus Coleman wasn't just handsome, though with his dark hair, green eyes, and that smile that made my knees weak, he certainly was that. He was successful, running his own digital marketing firm downtown. He was charming, the kind of man who remembered my coffee order and never forgot to text me good morning. He was everything I thought I wanted in a husband, everything my mother had raised me to look for in a partner. We met at a networking event for young professionals. I was there representing the nonprofit where I worked as a program coordinator, trying to secure sponsorships for our literacy program. Marcus approached me during the cocktail hour, and within minutes, he had me laughing so hard I forgot I was supposed to be working. He had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room, like your thoughts and opinions mattered more than anyone else's. Our first date was at Mulvaney's B&L, this intimate little restaurant in Midtown. He ordered wine I'd never heard of but pretended to appreciate, and we talked until the staff started stacking chairs on tables around us. He told me about growing up in Modesto, about his dreams of expanding his business, about how he wanted to travel the world someday. I told him about my work with underprivileged kids, about the novel I was writing in my spare time, about how I'd always wanted to live by the ocean. 3 months later, he said he loved me. 6 months after that, he proposed at Lake Tahoe during a weekend getaway, getting down on one knee right at sunset with a ring that must have cost him 3 months' salary. I said yes before he even finished asking the question. But looking back now, I realize I was in love with the idea of Marcus more than Marcus himself. I was in love with the way he made me feel special, chosen. I was in love with the future we were planning together, the life we were going to build. I was in love with being loved by someone like him. I should have paid attention to the small things. The way he always had to be right in every conversation. How he'd subtly put down my friends, calling them basic or drama queens, until I slowly stopped seeing them as much. The way he'd check his phone constantly when we were together, claiming it was work, but never quite meeting my eyes when he said it. The way his sister Emma always seemed to know things about our relationship that I'd never told her, private things, intimate details that should have stayed between us. Emma was 2 years younger than Marcus, blonde where he was dark, bubbly where he was reserved. She lived in San Francisco, working for some tech startup, and she called him at least 3 times a week. At first, I thought it was sweet how close they were. My own brother and I barely talked once a month, so I envied their relationship. Marcus would always answer her calls, even in the middle of dinner or when we were watching a movie. "Sorry, babe," he'd say, already reaching for his phone. "You know how Emma is." I did know how Emma was. She was demanding, dramatic, and completely convinced that no woman would ever be good enough for her precious big brother. But I tried to win her over anyway because I loved Marcus and wanted his family to accept me. I sent her birthday cards, remembered to ask about her job during our video calls, even helped her plan a surprise party for Marcus's 30th birthday. The warning signs were there, scattered throughout our relationship like breadcrumbs I was too infatuated to follow. Like the time I answered his phone when he was in the shower and Emma immediately hung up when she heard my voice. Or the way Marcus's expression would change whenever I mentioned wanting to be more involved in wedding planning decisions. Not angry, exactly, but distant, like he was somewhere else entirely. But I ignored it all because I was so desperate to believe in our love story. I was 29, watching all my friends get married and have babies, and here was this incredible man who'd chosen me. Me with my student loan debt and my nonprofit salary and my tendency to cry during commercials. He'd chosen me, and I wasn't about to question why. The night before our wedding, I was staying at my childhood home with my mom and my maid of honor, Jessica. We'd spent the evening doing face masks and drinking champagne, going over last-minute details and giggling like teenagers. My dress was hanging in my old closet, a simple but elegant A-line with delicate lace sleeves that had belonged to my grandmother. My something old, borrowed, blue, and new were all laid out on my dresser. Everything was ready. Marcus was staying at his best man's apartment across town, following the tradition that the bride and groom shouldn't see each other before the ceremony. We texted throughout the evening, cute, loving messages about how excited we were, how we couldn't wait to call each other husband and wife. His last text came at 11:30. Can't sleep. Too excited to marry you tomorrow. I love you, future Mrs. Coleman. I was just drifting off to sleep, my phone on the nightstand beside me, when I heard the familiar ping of a voice message. I figured it was Marcus, maybe unable to sleep and wanting to hear my voice. I smiled as I reached for my phone, expecting to hear him tell me he loved me one more time before our big day. Instead, I heard something that shattered my world into a million pieces. The voice note was meant for Emma. I knew this immediately, because Marcus started talking without any greeting, the way you do when you're continuing a conversation with someone you talk to constantly. But somehow, maybe because he was nervous or distracted, he'd accidentally sent it to me instead. What I heard in that 37-second recording changed everything I thought I knew about the man I was supposed to marry in less than 12 hours. It revealed truths I wasn't prepared for and set in motion a chain of events that would either destroy me or set me free. I'm going to tell you exactly what that voice note contained, but first, I need you to understand something. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt like something was wrong but couldn't put your finger on what, please hit that subscribe button. Because what happened next is a masterclass in how sometimes the most devastating moments in our lives can also be the most liberating. The voice note started with Marcus's laugh, that same warm, familiar sound that had made me fall in love with him in the first place. But within seconds, that laugh became the soundtrack to my heartbreak. You're not going to believe what just happened. His voice came through my phone speaker in that casual, unguarded tone he usually reserved for private conversations. Sarah just texted me saying she can't wait to marry me, and honestly, I almost laughed out loud. I sat up in bed, my heart already starting to race. This had to be some kind of mistake, some weird joke I wasn't understanding. But Marcus kept talking, and each word felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. I know we've talked about this before, but I keep thinking about what you said at dinner last week about how I'm settling. And you're right, Em. I am settling. She's fine, you know? She's sweet and she adores me, which is nice for my ego, but she's not exactly what I imagined for myself long term. The room started spinning. I gripped my phone so tightly my knuckles went white, but I couldn't stop listening. I needed to hear every word, even though each syllable was destroying me. Like, she works at that little nonprofit making $35,000 a year, talking about changing the world through literacy programs. It's cute, I guess, but it's not exactly ambitious. And don't even get me started on her writing. She keeps talking about this novel she's working on, but it's been 2 years and she's barely finished 50 pages. It's some romance thing about a woman finding herself after divorce. Groundbreaking stuff, right? His sarcasm cut through me like glass. This was my dream he was mocking, the book I'd shared with him in vulnerable moments, the story I'd been pouring my heart into during every spare moment I could find. The thing is, and don't judge me for this, but I think I'm only going through with the wedding because I've already invested so much time and money. We've been together 3 years. The deposits are all paid. Both our families are expecting it. It would be more trouble to call it off than to just go through with it. I felt like I was drowning. This wasn't love. This was convenience. This wasn't the fairy tale romance I thought we had. This was a business transaction where I was the losing investment. And honestly, Marcus continued, his voice dropping to that conspiratorial tone he used when he was about to say something he knew was wrong, I've kind of been seeing someone else anyway. Remember Valerie from the gym? The personal trainer? We've been hooking up for about 4 months now. She's everything Sarah isn't. Confident, sexy, financially independent. She owns her own fitness studio, drives a BMW, never cries at stupid commercials. For months. He'd been cheating on me for 4 months, and I'd had no idea. While I was tasting wedding cakes and addressing invitations, he was with another woman. While I was lying awake at night dreaming about our future together, he was laughing about me behind my back. Val knows about the wedding, obviously. She's not thrilled, but she understands it's complicated. I've told her that once Sarah and I are married and settled for a year or so, I'll probably file for divorce. Make it look like we just grew apart, you know? That way Sarah gets to have her princess wedding moment. I don't look like the bad guy for leaving her at the altar, and I can move on with someone who's actually on my level. The cruelty of it took my breath away. He was planning to marry me, let me believe we were building a life together, and then discard me when it became convenient. I was nothing more than a placeholder, a warm body to fill the role of wife until he was ready to trade up. I know you think I should just call it off now, but you don't understand the logistics. Sarah has no family money. Her parents already took out a loan to help pay for this wedding. If I cancel now, they'll be stuck with all that debt for a party that never happened. At least this way, everyone gets what they want in the short term. Sarah gets her wedding, her parents get to see their daughter married, and I get to look like a decent guy who tried to make it work. He was positioning his betrayal as charity, his deception as kindness. In his mind, he was doing me a favor by lying to me, by letting me marry him under completely false pretenses. Plus, and this is going to sound terrible, but Sarah's really good in bed when she wants to be. And she does this thing with her tongue that... I ripped the earphones out before I could hear the rest. I was going to be sick. I stumbled to the bathroom and barely made it to the toilet before I started throwing up, my body rejecting not just my dinner but the reality of what I'd just learned. The man I was supposed to marry in 10 hours thought I was beneath him. He'd been cheating on me for months. He was planning to use me for a year or two and then throw me away like garbage. Everything I thought I knew about our relationship was a lie. I sat on the cold bathroom floor, shaking and crying, trying to process what I'd just heard. Part of me wanted to convince myself I'd misunderstood somehow, that there was some explanation that would make this all make sense. But I couldn't unhear his words, couldn't unsee the truth of who Marcus really was. For 3 hours, I sat in that bathroom, cycling through every emotion imaginable. Heartbreak gave way to rage. Rage gave way to numbness. Numbness gave way to a cold, calculating fury I'd never felt before in my life. By 3 a.m., I'd stopped crying. By 4 a.m., I'd stopped shaking. And by 5 a.m., as the first hints of dawn started creeping through my childhood bedroom window, I'd made a decision. Marcus thought he could use me, manipulate me, humiliate me, and then discard me when it suited him. He thought I was weak, pathetic, beneath him in every way that mattered. He thought I'd just go along with his plan because I was too stupid or desperate to figure out what was really happening. He was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. I wasn't going to confront him before the wedding. I wasn't going to call it off or cause a scene or give him the chance to spin this as me being dramatic or unstable. No, I was going to let Marcus Coleman get exactly what he deserved, and I was going to make sure he got it in front of everyone who mattered to both of us. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, you know the rage I'm talking about. It's not hot and explosive. It's cold and precise and absolutely ruthless. If you know that feeling, drop a comment and let me know. Because what I was about to do next required that kind of ice-cold fury. I was going to give Marcus the wedding of his dreams and the nightmare he'd earned. At 6 a.m. on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, I stood in my childhood bedroom staring at my wedding dress and formulating a plan that would either make me feel like the powerful woman I'd forgotten I was, or land me in therapy for the next decade. The house was still quiet. My mom wouldn't wake up for another hour, and Jessica was crashed out on the living room couch after too much champagne the night before. I had time to think, time to plan, and most importantly, time to prepare for what I was about to do. First, I needed proof. That voice note could disappear. Marcus could claim his phone was hacked, that someone was playing a cruel joke, that I'd misunderstood what I'd heard. But I needed more than just his words. I needed evidence of the affair. I knew Marcus's patterns better than anyone. Every morning at exactly 6:30, He went for a run through McKinley Park. His phone would be on his nightstand, charging, probably full of text messages from Valerie that he deleted before I could see them. But deleted didn't mean gone forever. I'd learned that much from my job, where we'd had to recover lost files more times than I could count. My hands were surprisingly steady as I got dressed in jeans and a hoodie. I felt detached from my body, like I was watching someone else make these decisions. The rational part of my brain kept screaming that this was crazy, that I should just call off the wedding and deal with the fallout later. But the other part, the part that had been listening to Marcus mock my dreams and plan my disposal, that part was in complete control now. I drove to Marcus's best man apartment in my old Honda Civic, the same car Marcus had been subtly suggesting I replace with something more appropriate for a marketing executive's wife. I parked down the street and waited. At exactly 6:29, I saw him emerge from the building in his running gear, earbuds in, completely oblivious to the fact that his carefully constructed lies were about to collapse around him. I had maybe 45 minutes before he'd return. 45 minutes to find the evidence I needed and get back home before anyone realized I was gone. Marcus had given me a key to the apartment months ago, back when I still believed we told each other everything. I let myself in quietly, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure the neighbors could hear it. The apartment was exactly as I expected, bachelor pad clean, with beer bottles from the groomsmen's gathering the night before still on the coffee table. His phone was on the nightstand, plugged into the charger, just like I knew it would be. I picked it up with shaking hands and entered his passcode, my birthday, because he'd said he wanted to carry me with him everywhere. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. His text messages were disappointingly clean at first glance. But I knew Marcus was careful about digital evidence. His marketing business had taught him about the permanence of electronic communications. I went to his recently deleted photos first. What I found there made my stomach turn all over again. Photos of him and Valerie. Dozens of them, dating back exactly 4 months, just like he'd said in the voice note. Intimate photos, vacation photos from trips I'd never known he'd taken, photos of them at restaurants I'd suggested for our own date nights. In one photo, Valerie was wearing a bracelet that looked suspiciously like the one Marcus had claimed was sold out when I'd admired it at Nordstrom. But the worst part wasn't the photos themselves, it was the timestamps. He'd been with her on my birthday, while I was waiting for him at home with dinner and a cake I'd made from scratch. He'd been with her on the night he'd told me he was working late on a big campaign. He'd been with her 2 days after we'd had sex, after he'd told me he loved me, after he'd held me while I cried about a particularly hard day at work. I screenshotted everything, my fingers moving with mechanical precision. Then I went through his email, his Instagram DMs, even his LinkedIn messages. I found more evidence there, hotel reservations, dinner receipts, even a draft email to a divorce lawyer that he'd never sent but had been working on for weeks. By the time I heard his key in the lock, I had enough evidence to destroy not just our relationship, but his reputation, his business relationships, and his standing with both our families. I'd forwarded everything to my own email and deleted the evidence of my digital break-in. "Sarah?" Marcus called out as he walked in, sweaty from his run. "What are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be getting ready?" I turned to face him, and for a moment, I saw him exactly as he was. Not the man I'd fallen in love with, but the stranger who'd been lying to me for months. He looked smaller somehow, ordinary, like a magic trick that loses its power once you know how it's done. "I couldn't sleep," I said, surprised by how normal my voice sounded. "I wanted to see you before the ceremony. Is that okay?" His face relaxed into that charming smile that had fooled me for 3 years. "Of course it's okay. Come here." He tried to pull me into his arms, but I stepped back. "You're all sweaty," I said with a laugh that sounded genuine even to me. "Go shower. I just wanted to tell you that I love you, and I can't wait to be your wife." The words tasted like poison in my mouth, but Marcus's smile grew wider. "I love you too, Sarah. More than you know." More than I knew. If only he understood exactly how much I now knew. I left him there, humming in the shower, probably thinking about how he was going to spend the next year pretending to love me before moving on to his real life with Valerie. He had no idea that I'd just gathered enough evidence to expose every lie he'd ever told me. Back home, I found my mom in the kitchen making coffee, her face glowing with excitement for her only daughter's wedding day. "There's my beautiful bride," she said, pulling me into a hug. "Are you excited? Nervous? You look a little pale, sweetheart." I looked at my mother, this woman who'd worked double shifts as a nurse to give me opportunities she'd never had, who'd taken out a loan she couldn't afford to help pay for this wedding, who'd been planning this day since I was a little girl playing dress-up in her closet. How could I tell her that everything was a lie? How could I explain that her daughter had been played for a fool by a man who thought we weren't good enough for him? "Just wedding day jitters," I said, forcing a smile. "Is Jessica awake?" "Just barely. I think someone had a little too much champagne last night." Jessica stumbled into the kitchen looking exactly like someone who'd had too much champagne, her hair sticking up at odd angles and mascara smudged under her eyes. "Please tell me you made coffee," she groaned, slumping into a chair. "And please tell me I didn't make any embarrassing speeches about your sex life last night." "You kept it relatively clean," I assured her. "But we need to start getting ready soon. The hair and makeup team will be here in 2 hours." As my mom and Jessica chattered about the day's schedule, I excused myself and went back to my room. I had work to do, and not much time to do it. I opened my laptop and started typing, my fingers flying across the keyboard as I crafted what would either be the most satisfying or most destructive thing I'd ever done. I was writing my wedding speech. Not the sweet, grateful speech I'd originally planned, but something else entirely. Something that would give Marcus exactly what he'd said he wanted. A memorable wedding day that everyone would be talking about for years to come. He wanted to marry me and then throw me away? Fine. But he was going to have to face the consequences of his choices in front of every person we both cared about. He was going to have to look our families in the eye while the truth of who he really was came spilling out for everyone to see. Some of you might think what I was planning was too extreme, too cruel. But ask yourself this: if someone you loved and trusted had been planning to use you, humiliate you, and discard you, what would you do? Would you go quietly? Would you let them get away with it? I wasn't going quietly. Not anymore. The next few hours passed in a surreal blur of wedding preparations that felt like I was getting ready for someone else's life. The hair and makeup team arrived right on schedule, transforming my childhood bedroom into a makeshift salon filled with curling irons, bobby pins, and enough cosmetics to paint a small house. "You're absolutely glowing," said Miranda, the makeup artist, as she worked on my face with the kind of precision usually reserved for museum restoration. There's nothing like the happiness of a bride on her wedding day. If only she knew that my glow was actually the result of barely contained fury and a dangerous amount of caffeine. I'd been up all night perfecting my plan, and now I felt like I was operating on pure adrenaline and spite. My mom fluttered around the room, taking photos of every moment, her eyes bright with tears of joy. "I can't believe my little girl is getting married," she kept saying. "Marcus is such a lucky man." Jessica, recovering from her hangover with the help of 2 aspirin and a large iced coffee, was more practical in her approach to the morning's preparations. "Okay, let's run through the timeline one more time," she said, consulting her phone. "Photos at 2, ceremony at 4, cocktail hour at 5:30, reception at 7. You've got your vows printed out, right?" "All set," I replied, patting the small clutch that would hold my phone, lip gloss, and the speech that was going to change everything. My vows. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent weeks crafting the perfect words to express my love and commitment to Marcus, but those vows were written by a woman who believed her fiancé loved her back. The woman I was now, the one who knew exactly what Marcus thought of her, had very different things to say. Around noon, the photographer arrived to capture those precious getting-ready moments that every bride supposedly treasures. I smiled and posed as she directed, letting her capture images of me in my robe, having my makeup touched up, sharing champagne with my mother and best friend. These photos would tell the story of a radiant bride preparing for the happiest day of her life. No one looking at them would ever guess that I was actually preparing for war. "Can we get a shot of you reading a text from the groom?" the photographer suggested. Those always turn out so sweet and romantic. My phone had been buzzing all morning with messages from Marcus. Sweet, loving texts about how excited he was, how he couldn't wait to see me in my dress, how today was the beginning of our beautiful life together. Each message was like a small knife twist, knowing what I now knew about his real feelings. But I played the part perfectly, smiling softly as I read his latest lie. 3 hours until I get to call you my wife. I'm the luckiest man in the world. That's beautiful, the photographer cooed, snapping away. He sounds like a keeper. He really is something special. I agreed. And for once, I wasn't lying. Marcus was special, in the worst possible way. By 1:30, it was time to put on my dress. This was the moment every bride dreams about, the moment when everything becomes real. My mom helped me step into the delicate lace gown that had belonged to my grandmother, her hands gentle and reverent as she fastened each button. You look exactly like she did on her wedding day, my mom whispered, tears streaming down her face. She would be so proud of you, Sarah. So proud of the woman you've become. I stared at myself in the full-length mirror, and for a moment, I saw her too, my grandmother, who'd worn this dress in 1952 when she married my grandfather after he returned from the war. They'd been married for 53 years before she passed away, a love story that had always been my blueprint for what marriage should look like. Honest, committed, built on mutual respect and genuine partnership. Everything Marcus and I weren't. She's beautiful, Jessica breathed, appearing behind me in the mirror. Marcus is going to lose his mind when he sees you. Marcus was going to lose something, all right, but it wasn't going to be his mind. The photographer captured every moment, my mom's tears, Jessica's excited squeals, my own carefully composed expression of bridal joy. I let her take dozens of photos, knowing that someday, when the dust had settled, these images would serve as a reminder of the moment I decided to stop being a victim and start being something much more dangerous. At 2 p.m. sharp, the bridal party loaded into the limousine that would take us to Riverside Gardens. Jessica had arranged for mimosas, and everyone was giggling and chattering about the beautiful ceremony ahead. I sipped my champagne and nodded along, but my mind was elsewhere, running through my plan one final time. I timed everything perfectly. The ceremony would proceed normally. I wasn't cruel enough to humiliate Marcus in front of the minister and our grandparents during the actual vows. But afterward, during the reception, when everyone was relaxed and happy and Marcus felt safe in his deception, that's when I would strike. The venue looked like something out of a fairy tale. Riverside Gardens had been decorated with white roses and baby's breath, exactly as I'd specified months ago when I still believed I was planning a celebration of true love. String lights twinkled in the trees, and the Sacramento River provided a picturesque backdrop for what should have been the perfect wedding. Marcus was waiting at the end of the aisle in his black tuxedo, looking impossibly handsome and completely at ease. He had no idea that his bride knew every detail of his betrayal. He had no idea that his carefully planned future was about to implode spectacularly. As the wedding march began, and I took my father's arm, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. This was it, the point of no return. In a few hours, Marcus Coleman would learn that underestimating Sarah Mitchell was the biggest mistake he'd ever made. My father squeezed my arm as we began our walk down the aisle. "You look radiant, sweetheart," he whispered. "I'm so happy for you." I squeezed back, storing up this moment of his love and pride to carry me through what was coming next. Because in a few hours, he was going to learn some very unpleasant truths about the man he was about to welcome into our family. As we reached the altar, and my father lifted my veil to kiss my cheek, I looked directly into Marcus's eyes. He was smiling that charming smile, probably thinking about how he'd managed to pull off this elaborate charade. How he'd convinced everyone that he was a good man marrying the woman he loved. "You look incredible," he whispered as I took his hands. "So do you," I whispered back, and I meant it. He looked exactly like what he was, a beautiful lie dressed up in an expensive suit. The ceremony began, and I played my part flawlessly. I listened to the minister talk about love and commitment and the sacred bond of marriage. I promised to love, honor, and cherish Marcus Coleman in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse. What I didn't promise was to let him get away with what he'd done to me. As the minister pronounced us husband and wife and Marcus leaned in to kiss me, I felt a single moment of genuine sadness for the woman I'd been 24 hours ago, the woman who'd believed this was real, who'd thought she'd found her happily ever after. That woman was gone now, replaced by someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. The kiss ended, and we turned to face our families and friends, their faces beaming with joy and celebration. Everyone was so happy for us, so convinced they were witnessing the beginning of a beautiful love story. They were about to learn that sometimes the most beautiful things are also the most poisonous. If you've ever had a smile and play along while your heart was breaking, you'll understand what the next few hours were like for me. But sometimes, the best revenge requires patience. And I was about to become very, very patient. The cocktail hour after our ceremony was torture disguised as celebration. I stood next to Marcus, my new husband, accepting congratulations and well wishes from everyone we cared about, while inside I felt like I was slowly dying from the effort of maintaining my facade. "You two are just perfect together," gushed Marcus's Aunt Helen, pressing a glass of champagne into my hand. "I've never seen Marcus so happy." "You're exactly what he needed, dear." If she only knew what Marcus actually needed, and what he was about to get. Marcus played his part beautifully too, his arm around my waist, pulling me close whenever someone wanted to take photos. He whispered sweet things in my ear that made our guests smile, and coo about young love. To everyone watching, we were the picture of newlywed bliss. "Have I told you how stunning you look today?" he murmured during a quiet moment, his lips brushing against my ear in a way that would have made me melt just 24 hours ago. "Only about a dozen times," I replied with a smile that felt carved into my face. "Well, it's true. You're absolutely radiant. I'm the luckiest man alive." The casual cruelty of his performance was breathtaking. He was saying all the right things, hitting all the right notes, while planning my emotional destruction with the same precision he used for his marketing campaigns. Emma was working the room like a professional, charming everyone with stories about Marcus's childhood and gushing about what a wonderful addition I was to the family. Every so often, she'd catch my eye and smile, and I had to resist the urge to walk over and ask her exactly how long she'd known about Valerie. "Sarah," she called out, approaching me with 2 glasses of wine. "I've been looking for you. I wanted to give you something." She pulled a small velvet box from her purse and pressed it into my hands. "This was our grandmother's," she said, her eyes bright with what looked like genuine emotion. "Marcus asked me to give it to you as a wedding gift. It's been in our family for 3 generations." I opened the box to find a delicate gold bracelet with a small diamond charm. It was beautiful, the kind of heirloom that should have made me cry with happiness at being welcomed into the Coleman family. Instead, all I could think about was the bracelet Valerie had been wearing in those photos. The one Marcus had claimed was sold out when I'd admired it. This family heirloom was lovely, but apparently his mistress got to shop retail, while his wife got hand-me-downs. "It's beautiful, Emma. Thank you so much." I let her fasten it around my wrist, playing the role of the grateful new daughter-in-law while calculating exactly how much damage her precious brother's secrets were going to do to their family dynamic. The photographer continued capturing every moment, completely oblivious to the undercurrents of deception swirling through the celebration. She posed Marcus and me against the river backdrop, coaxing us into romantic embraces that made my skin crawl. "Let's get one of the grooms surprising the bride with a kiss," she suggested. Marcus didn't need to be asked twice. He spun me around and dipped me dramatically, pressing his lips to mine while our guests applauded. The kiss lasted several seconds longer than necessary, and I could feel his satisfaction in the performance, his pleasure at how perfectly he was pulling off this charade. When he straightened me up, his eyes were sparkling with what anyone else would have mistaken for pure joy. "God, I love you," he said, just loud enough for the photographer to catch. "I love you too," I replied automatically, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. My parents were glowing with pride, my mother dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, while my father beamed like he'd personally arranged for his daughter to marry a prince. Marcus had charmed them completely over the past 3 years, and they genuinely believed they were gaining the son they'd never had. I couldn't have asked for a better man for my daughter, my father told Marcus during a quiet moment, clapping him on the shoulder. You make her so happy. That's all a father can ask for. Marcus accepted the praise with perfect humility, shaking my father's hand and saying something about how he was the one who was blessed. Watching him manipulate my parents' emotions with the same calculated charm he'd used on me made my blood boil, but I kept smiling, kept playing along. Jessica appeared at my elbow, slightly tipsy from the champagne, and glowing with maid of honor pride. Okay, Mrs. Coleman, she said, emphasizing my new name with glee. Time for dinner? And then speeches. Mrs. Coleman. The name I'd been dreaming about for months now felt like a curse. But it was also my weapon. Marcus's legal wife had certain advantages that his girlfriend didn't, certain rights that I was about to exercise in ways he'd never see coming. The reception venue looked like something out of a magazine. Our wedding planner had outdone herself with the romantic lighting, the elegant centerpieces, and the head table that overlooked the dance floor where we'd supposedly dance to our song later in the evening. Everything was perfect for a celebration of true love. Too bad this wasn't that kind of party anymore. As the guests found their seats, I caught sight of several faces that made my stomach tighten. Marcus's business partners were there, including the senior partner whose recommendation had helped Marcus land his biggest client last year. My colleagues from the nonprofit were scattered throughout the room, people who'd listened to me gush about Marcus for 3 years and who'd been so excited to celebrate my happiness. They were all here to witness what they thought was the beginning of my fairy tale. Instead, they were about to see the end of Marcus's carefully constructed world. Dinner was served, a 4-course meal that I'd spent weeks perfecting with the caterer, choosing Marcus's favorite dishes because I'd wanted our wedding to be a reflection of how well I knew and loved him. Now, every bite tasted like betrayal. Marcus was in his element, working the room between courses, shaking hands, and accepting congratulations from everyone who mattered in his professional and personal life. He introduced me as his beautiful wife, with such apparent pride that I almost admired his acting ability. Almost. Ladies and gentlemen, the DJ announced as the dessert plates were cleared away, it's time for speeches. First, let's hear from the maid of honor, Jessica Williams. Jessica stood up, champagne glass in hand, and delivered a perfect maid of honor speech about friendship, love, and how Marcus had brought out the best in me. She told embarrassing stories about our college years, made everyone laugh with tales of my disastrous dating history before Marcus, and ended with a toast to our epic love story. The best man followed with his own tribute to Marcus, painting him as the loyal friend, the successful businessman, the devoted boyfriend who'd finally found his perfect match. He joked about how Marcus had talked about me constantly from the moment we met, how he'd known I was the one within weeks of our first date. Every word was another knife twist, another reminder of how completely I'd been fooled by Marcus's performance. And now, the DJ announced, the bride would like to say a few words. This was it. The moment I'd been building toward all day. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of every eye in the room on me. Marcus was smiling up at me with what looked like genuine affection, probably expecting me to deliver some sweet, emotional tribute to our love. He was about to get something very different. I pulled my phone from my clutch with hands that were perfectly steady, opened the Notes app where I'd saved my speech, and cleared my throat. The room fell silent, everyone eager to hear the bride's heartfelt words about her new husband. Thank you all so much for being here tonight, I began, my voice carrying clearly across the room. It means the world to Marcus and me to have all of our loved ones here to celebrate with us. Marcus nodded, still smiling, still completely oblivious to what was coming. I had a different speech prepared. I continued, but something happened last night that changed what I wanted to say. You see, at 11:47 p.m., I received a voice message that wasn't meant for me. Marcus's smile flickered slightly, but he was still trying to figure out where I was going with this. It was meant for my new sister-in-law, Emma. I looked directly at her, watching the color drain from her face as realization began to dawn. but Marcus accidentally sent it to me instead. Now Marcus wasn't smiling anymore. He was staring at me with growing horror, finally understanding that his perfect plan had just gone catastrophically wrong. In that voice message, my husband, my brand new husband, told his sister some very interesting things about me and about our marriage. The room was dead silent now. I could feel the tension rising, the confusion and concern spreading through our guests as they tried to understand what was happening. He told her that he was settling for me, that I wasn't ambitious enough, smart enough, successful enough for someone like him. He mocked my job, my dreams of being a writer, even the way I cry during commercials. Marcus started to stand up, probably to try to stop me or explain, but I held up my hand. Please, darling, let me finish. After all, this is my speech. He sank back into his chair, his face pale and stricken. But that wasn't the most interesting part of the message. The most interesting part was when Marcus told Emma about Valerie. A collective gasp went through the room. Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. Valerie is the personal trainer Marcus has been sleeping with for the past 4 months. According to my husband, she's everything I'm not. Confident, sexy, financially independent. She owns her own business, drives a BMW, and never cries at stupid commercials. The silence in the room was deafening. I could see people looking back and forth between Marcus and me, trying to process what they were hearing. Marcus also told Emma that he was planning to stay married to me for about a year, just long enough to make it look like we grew apart naturally, and then divorce me to be with Valerie. He said it would be too much trouble to call off the wedding now, and besides, I get my princess moment, and he doesn't look like the bad guy. Marcus was shaking his head, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, but no words were coming out. He even said that my parents had taken out a loan to help pay for this wedding, and if he called it off now, they'd be stuck with all that debt for a party that never happened. Wasn't that thoughtful of him? I could see my parents at their table, my mother's hand over her mouth in shock, my father's face turning red with anger. So, I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate Marcus getting exactly what he wanted, a memorable wedding that everyone will be talking about for years to come. I raised my champagne glass in a mock toast. To my husband, Marcus Coleman. May you get everything you deserve. The silence that followed my toast was so complete I could hear the gentle lapping of the Sacramento River against the dock outside. 150 wedding guests sat frozen in their chairs, champagne glasses halfway to their lips, trying to process what they'd just heard. Marcus finally found his voice. "Sarah, please," he said, standing up so quickly his chair nearly toppled over. There's been a misunderstanding. Let me explain." "Explain what, exactly?" I asked, my voice carrying that same calm tone I'd maintained throughout my speech. "Which part did I misunderstand? The part where you called me unambitious? The part where you've been cheating on me for 4 months? Or the part where you planned to divorce me once you got tired of playing house?" I could see people throughout the room pulling out their phones, some probably recording, others texting frantically. This was going to be all over social media within the hour, but that was exactly what I wanted. Marcus had built his reputation on being the charming, successful guy who had it all figured out. Let's see how that reputation held up under scrutiny. Emma stood up from her table, her face flushed and her eyes bright with panic. "Sarah, I think you're confused about what you heard. Marcus would never." "Oh, Emma." I turned to face her, and she actually took a step back. "You knew about Valerie, didn't you? All those phone calls, all those conversations Marcus said he couldn't tell me about because they were private family business. You knew your brother was cheating on me, and you helped him cover it up." Emma's mouth opened and closed several times before she managed to whisper, "That's not. I never." "You never what? Never told him he was settling? Never encouraged him to think he deserved better than me? Never helped him plan the perfect timeline for destroying my life?" I could see Marcus trying to work out damage control, that marketing brain of his probably running through crisis management strategies. But there was no spinning this, no way to make himself look like anything other than what he was, a liar, a cheater, and a coward. "Sarah, honey," my mother's voice cut through the tension as she approached the head table. "Maybe we should take this somewhere private." "No, Mom." I shook my head firmly. I've been private for too long. I've been quiet and accommodating and understanding while my husband-to-be made a fool of me. Everyone here deserves to know exactly who they're celebrating tonight. Marcus made another attempt at control. This is crazy, Sarah. You're having some kind of breakdown. The stress of the wedding, maybe. A breakdown? I laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to cut glass. Marcus, I've never been more clear-headed in my life. Would you like me to play the voice message for everyone? I saved it, of course, along with all those photos of you and Valerie that you thought you deleted. His face went ashen. You went through my phone? I went through my cheating husband's phone, yes. Funny thing about deleted photos, they're not really deleted until you empty the recently deleted folder. You should know that, being in digital marketing and all. The crowd was starting to murmur now, the shock giving way to whispered conversations and horrified gasps as people began to fully grasp what was happening. I could see Marcus's business partners huddled together, probably already calculating how this scandal would affect their association with him. His boss, the senior partner who'd recommended him for that big client, was staring at Marcus like he'd never seen him before. Ladies and gentlemen, I addressed the room again. I apologize for turning what was supposed to be a celebration into something else entirely. But I thought you should know the truth about the man you're here to honor tonight. I reached into my purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope. For those of you who are still skeptical, I have copies of text messages between Marcus and Valerie dating back for months, hotel receipts from their little getaways, and even a draft email to a divorce lawyer that Marcus has been working on for weeks. I walked over to Marcus's table and dropped the envelope in front of him. You wanted to plan my disposal, darling? Here's everything you'll need for your lawyer. Marcus stared at the envelope like it was a snake about to strike. Sarah, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can what? Work through the fact that you think I'm beneath you? Work through 4 months of cheating? Work through the fact that you married me planning to divorce me? I shook my head. I don't think so. Jessica had made her way to the head table, her face a mask of shock and growing anger. Marcus, is this true? Have you been cheating on Sarah? Marcus looked around the room desperately, probably hoping to find a friendly face, someone who might believe his denials. Instead, he found a room full of people staring at him with disgust, disappointment, and in some cases, barely contained rage. My father had stood up from his table and was walking toward us with a kind of purposeful stride that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. Marcus saw him coming and actually backed up a step. Dad, please don't cause a scene, I said quickly. This isn't your fault, and Marcus isn't worth you getting arrested for assault. He took advantage of you, my father said, his voice shaking with fury. He took advantage of our whole family. We trusted him. We welcomed him. We went into debt for this wedding because we thought he loved you. I know, Dad. And he's going to pay for that. Just not the way you're thinking. I turned back to Marcus, who was looking increasingly desperate as the full magnitude of his situation began to sink in. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the room. Tomorrow morning, I'm filing for divorce. Not in a year when it's convenient for you, not when you're ready to move on with Valerie, but tomorrow. And thanks to California's community property laws, I'm entitled to half of everything we own as of today, including half your business, half your savings, half your stock portfolio, and half the value of that condo you're so proud of. Marcus's face went white. You can't. That's not. We just got married today. Yes, we did. Which makes me your legal wife with legal rights. Rights I'm going to exercise to their fullest extent. I smiled at him, and I could see my expression reflected in his eyes. Cold, calculating, and absolutely ruthless. You wanted to use me and then throw me away when it was convenient? Well, darling, the convenience is all mine now. Emma tried one more time to salvage the situation. Sarah, please think about what you're doing. This will hurt everyone, not just Marcus. Think about your families, your friends. I am thinking about them, I replied. I'm thinking about how they deserve better than being lied to and manipulated by someone who thinks he's smarter than everyone else in the room. I looked around at all the faces staring back at me, some sympathetic, some shocked, some clearly impressed by the spectacular nature of Marcus's downfall. "If you'll excuse me," I announced to the room, "I have some phone calls to make. The bar is still open, the music is still playing, and there's still plenty of food. Please, enjoy the rest of the evening. After all, we did pay for it." I started to walk away from the head table, then paused and turned back to Marcus one last time. "Oh, and Marcus? You might want to call Valerie and let her know that your timeline just got moved up significantly. I have a feeling you're going to need her financial independence sooner than you thought." The last thing I saw before I walked out of my own wedding reception was Marcus sitting alone at the head table, surrounded by the ruins of his carefully constructed life, finally understanding what it meant to underestimate Sarah Mitchell. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes it's just letting someone destroy themselves while you watch from a safe distance. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get to help them along the way. I didn't go far, just to the bridal suite the venue had provided for last-minute touch-ups and private moments. I could hear the murmur of voices from the reception hall, rising and falling in waves as people processed what they'd just witnessed and probably debated whether to stay or leave. My phone was buzzing constantly with calls and texts, but I ignored them all except for one number, my divorce lawyer. Yes, I already had one lined up. What can I say? Marcus wasn't the only one who could plan ahead. "Sarah?" Janet Morrison answered on the second ring. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you until Monday at the earliest." "How was the wedding?" "Memorable," I said, kicking off my heels and sinking into one of the elegant chairs. "I need you to file papers first thing tomorrow morning."
"And Janet?"
"We need to move fast." I could hear her shifting into professional mode. "What happened?" I gave her the condensed version, the voice message, the evidence of the affair, Marcus's admission that he'd married, me planning to divorce me within a year. Janet listened without interruption, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Sarah," she said finally, "this is going to be a very expensive mistake for your husband. How quickly can you get me copies of all the evidence you mentioned?" "I'll email everything within the hour." "Janet, I need to know, how bad is this going to be for him?" "Depends on what we find when we dig into his finances. But based on what you've told me, he's looking at losing half of everything, plus I can argue for spousal support given the short duration of the marriage and his admitted plan to deceive you. California doesn't look kindly on fraud in marriage contracts." I felt a grim satisfaction settle in my chest. Good. I want him to understand that actions have consequences. After I hung up with Janet, I sat alone in the bridal suite, still wearing my grandmother's wedding dress, and allowed myself to feel everything I'd been holding back. The grief, the rage, the profound sense of betrayal, it all crashed over me at once, and for the first time since I'd heard that voice message, I cried. But these weren't tears of defeat. These were tears of relief, of anger, of a woman finally allowing herself to feel the full extent of what had been done to her. A soft knock on the door interrupted my moment of catharsis. "Sarah? It's Mom. Can I come in?" I wiped my eyes and called for her to enter. My mother appeared in the doorway looking older than she had that morning, the joy of her daughter's wedding day replaced by concern and confusion. "Sweetheart," she said, closing the door behind her and crossing to sit beside me. "What can I do? How can I help?" "You can't," I said, reaching for her hand. "This is something I have to handle myself." "But Mom, I'm so sorry about the loan, about the money you and Dad spent." "Don't you dare apologize for that monster's behavior," she said fiercely. "Your father and I are proud of you for standing up for yourself. We just wish you hadn't had to." "How bad is it out there?" I asked, nodding toward the reception hall. "About half the guests have left," she admitted. "The other half are either getting very drunk or having very intense conversations about what just happened. Marcus disappeared about 10 minutes after you did. Emma went with him." Of course she did. Emma would be in full damage control mode now, probably trying to convince Marcus that this was all a misunderstanding that could still be fixed. "The photographers?" I asked.
"Gone."
"Along with the videographer. Though I suspect there's plenty of phone video floating around social media by now." I nodded. I'd expected that. By morning, The story of my spectacular wedding revenge would probably be trending on local Facebook groups and Instagram stories. Marcus's professional reputation was going to take a hit that would last long after our divorce was finalized. What happens now? Mom asked. Now I go home, file for divorce, and start rebuilding my life without a man who never deserved me in the first place. Another knock interrupted us, this one more hesitant. Sarah? It's Jessica.
Can I talk to you?
My best friend entered looking shell-shocked, her maid of honor dress wrinkled, and her makeup smudged. Holy shit, Sarah. I mean, holy shit. That's about the most accurate summary I've heard all evening, I replied. I keep thinking about all the times I told you how lucky you were, how perfect Marcus was for you. Jessica shook her head in disgust. God, I feel like such an idiot. Were there signs? Things I should have seen? Probably, I admitted. But he was good at hiding it. That's what makes him so dangerous. He's genuinely charming when he wants to be. What can I do? Jessica asked. Do you need somewhere to stay tonight? Because obviously you can't go back to the apartment you share with him. I'd been so focused on the public humiliation aspect of my revenge that I hadn't fully considered the practical implications. She was right. I couldn't go home tonight. Home was Marcus's condo, filled with our shared belongings and the remnants of our shared life. Actually, yes, I said. I think I'd like to come stay with you for a few days, if that's okay. Of course it's okay. It's more than okay. Jessica's expression hardened. And Sarah? What you did tonight? That took guts. Marcus had it coming. As we prepared to leave the venue, my mother helped me out of my wedding dress and into the casual clothes I'd brought to change into for the honeymoon. The honeymoon we were supposed to leave for tomorrow morning, a week in Maui that Marcus had booked at a resort I'd been dreaming about for years. What about the trip? Mom asked, carefully hanging the dress in its protective bag. I'll see if I can transfer it to my name only, I said. Maybe Jessica and I can go instead. After the divorce is final, I'm going to need a vacation. As we gathered my belongings, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. A few hours ago, I'd been a radiant bride. Now I looked like exactly what I was, a woman who'd just blown up her entire life and was trying to figure out what came next. But you know what? I didn't look defeated. I looked free. The three of us made our way through the venue toward the exit, passing the reception hall where the remnants of my wedding party were still processing the evening's events. I could see some of Marcus's friends and colleagues clustered around tables, their conversations stopping abruptly when they saw me. Let them talk. Let them gossip and speculate and try to figure out what had really happened tonight. The truth was simpler than they probably imagined. A woman had discovered that the man she loved had been planning to use and discard her, and she decided not to go quietly. As we reached the parking lot, I felt my phone buzz with another call. This time, I looked at the screen. It was Marcus. I answered. Sarah, please. His voice was strained, desperate. We need to talk. This has gotten out of hand. I can explain everything. There's nothing to explain, Marcus. I heard you perfectly clearly in that voice message. You settled for me, you've been cheating on me, and you married me planning to divorce me when it became convenient. What part of that needs explaining? The voice message. I was drunk. I was venting to Emma. I didn't mean any of it. You were drunk at 11:30 at night before your wedding? That's your defense. Sarah, please. I love you. I know I screwed up, but I love you. I stopped walking and really considered his words. 48 hours ago, hearing Marcus say he loved me would have made my heart soar. Now it just made me tired.
No, Marcus. You don't love me.
You might have loved the idea of me, the convenience of me, but you don't love me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have spent 4 months sleeping with another woman. If you loved me, you wouldn't have mocked my dreams to your sister. If you loved me, you wouldn't have married me planning to throw me away when someone better came along. That's not. I wasn't planning to. Yes, you were. And now you're going to live with the consequences of that plan. Goodbye, Marcus. I hung up and turned off my phone. Whatever else Marcus had to say, I didn't want to hear it. I'd heard enough of his lies to last several lifetimes. As Jessica drove us away from Riverside Gardens, I watched the venue disappear in the rearview mirror. Tomorrow, the staff would clean up the remnants of what should have been the happiest day of my life. They'd pack away the flowers, dispose of the half-eaten cake, and reset the space for the next couple's dream wedding. But tonight I was free. Legally married to a man who'd betrayed me, facing a messy and expensive divorce, with my personal business splashed across social media for everyone to see, but free. Free from Marcus's lies, free from his manipulation, free from the life he'd planned to give me and then take away when he got bored. It wasn't the ending I'd planned when I put on my wedding dress that morning. But sometimes the best endings are the ones you never saw coming. 3 days after my wedding turned public humiliation spectacle, I was sitting in Janet Morrison's law office downtown, surrounded by stacks of financial documents and feeling like I was about to declare war on my own life. "This is worse than I thought," Janet said, looking up from Marcus's business records with a kind of expression usually reserved for natural disasters. "Sarah, your husband has been hiding money." I wasn't surprised. After discovering the depth of Marcus's deception about our relationship, finding out he was also deceiving me financially felt like finding a spider in your shoe after you've already been bitten by a snake. Unpleasant, but not exactly shocking. "How much money are we talking about?" I asked. "He's got 3 separate savings accounts you didn't know about, an investment portfolio worth about $200,000, and, this is the interesting part, he's been funneling money from his business into a joint account with someone named Valerie Chen." My stomach dropped. "Joint account?" "They have a joint account. Opened 6 months ago. They've been depositing money regularly, probably planning for their future together while you were planning your wedding." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away all over again. While I was tasting wedding cakes and addressing invitations, Marcus and Valerie were opening bank accounts together. While I was lying awake at night dreaming about our future, they were literally investing in theirs. "Janet," I said carefully, "please tell me this means what I think it means legally." Her smile was sharp as a blade. "It means your husband committed fraud. He entered into a marriage contract while actively planning to dissolve it and while hiding significant assets from his spouse. In California, that's grounds for both divorce and a civil suit." Over the next week, I learned more about Marcus Coleman than I discovered in 3 years of dating and engagement. He wasn't just successful, he was wealthy. Wealthy enough that he could have easily afforded a bigger engagement ring, a more expensive wedding, the down payment on a house that I'd thought was beyond our budget. But he'd kept me in the dark about his true financial situation, letting me believe we were a young couple just starting out, building our dreams together dollar by dollar. Meanwhile, he'd been accumulating assets and planning a future that didn't include me. The discovery process revealed even more disturbing truths. Marcus had been researching divorce laws for months before our wedding. He'd calculated exactly how long he needed to stay married to minimize financial damage in a divorce. He'd even consulted with a lawyer about prenuptial agreements, but decided against it because, in his words, Sarah would never sign anything that sophisticated.
He was right about that.
3 months before the wedding, I would have signed anything Marcus put in front of me without reading it, because I trusted him completely. That woman felt like a stranger to me now. "We need to discuss your goals for this divorce," Janet said during one of our strategy sessions. "Obviously, you want out of the marriage, but how aggressive do you want to be about the financial settlement?" I thought about Marcus's voice in that recording, calling me unambitious, mocking my job and my dreams. I thought about him with Valerie, planning their future, while lying to my face about ours. I thought about my parents' loan, taken out because they believed they were helping their daughter marry a man who loved her. I want him to understand that I'm not the pathetic, desperate woman he thought he was manipulating, I said. I want him to realize that underestimating me was the most expensive mistake he'll ever make. Janet's grin was predatory. "I can work with that." The media attention was more intense than I'd expected. What started as local gossip had somehow evolved into a regional news story about wedding revenge, with my situation being discussed on morning talk shows and lifestyle blogs across California. "Bride exposes cheating groom at their own wedding reception" was trending on social media for almost a week. The video footage shot by guests had been shared thousands of times, turning my personal humiliation into public entertainment. But the strange thing was, Most of the commentary was supportive. Women were sharing their own stories of betrayal, praising me for refusing to be a victim, calling me a queen and an inspiration. The narrative that emerged wasn't about a bitter woman causing a scene. It was about a strong woman refusing to be used. Marcus, on the other hand, was being crucified in the court of public opinion. His business was losing clients, his social media was flooded with angry comments, and, according to mutual friends, he'd basically become a pariah in Sacramento's professional circles. Good, I said when Jessica updated me on his social exile. Let him see how it feels to have everyone know exactly who he really is. I'd been staying with Jessica for 2 weeks when Marcus finally tried to approach me directly. He showed up at the nonprofit where I worked, probably thinking he could charm me in person the way he'd charmed me over the phone for 3 years. He was wrong. I was leaving work around 6 p.m. when I saw him leaning against his BMW in the parking lot, looking like a magazine ad for successful young professionals. For just a moment, seeing him there made my heart skip, muscle memory from 3 years of loving him. Then I remembered the voice message, and the feeling passed. "Sarah," he said as I approached my car, his voice soft and pleading.
Please.
"Can we just talk?" "We have nothing to talk about, Marcus. My lawyer is handling everything." "Your lawyer is trying to destroy me," he said, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I heard genuine fear in his voice. "She's demanding half of everything, including my business." "Sarah, that's my entire life." "And I was supposed to be your entire life too," I replied, unlocking my car. "Right up until you decided I wasn't good enough for you anymore." "I never said you weren't good enough. You said you were settling for me. You said I wasn't ambitious or successful enough. You said you were only marrying me because it was too much trouble to cancel." I turned to face him fully. "Marcus, I heard every word. You can't unsay them." "I was just venting. Everyone vents about their relationships sometimes. It doesn't mean I didn't love you. You were sleeping with another woman for 4 months while planning our wedding. You opened a bank account with her while I was addressing our wedding invitations. That's not venting, Marcus. That's a betrayal so complete that I'm not sure there's even a word for it." He looked desperate now, his perfectly styled hair falling into his eyes, his expensive shirt wrinkled from stress. "Sarah, please. I'll do anything. I'll go to counseling, I'll cut off all contact with Valerie, You'll what? Pretend to love me for another year before filing for divorce like you originally planned?" I shook my head. "I'm done being your backup plan." "You were never my backup plan." "Yes, I was. I was the safe choice, the woman who adored you enough to overlook your flaws, who made you look good to your family and friends without challenging you to be better." I felt tears prick at my eyes, but these were angry tears, not sad ones. I was convenient, Marcus. Convenient and disposable. That's not true. Then why is your money in a joint account with Valerie? Why were you researching divorce laws before our wedding? Why did you tell your sister that you were planning to divorce me in a year? He didn't have an answer for that. Of course he didn't. "Sarah," he said finally, his voice breaking slightly, "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but destroying me won't undo that hurt." I looked at this man I'd once loved so completely, this person I'd thought I'd spend my life with, and felt nothing. Not love, not hate, just a kind of tired indifference. "I'm not trying to destroy you, Marcus. I'm just refusing to let you destroy me." I got in my car and drove away, leaving him standing in the parking lot looking like a man who'd finally realized the true cost of his choices. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. If you've ever had to rebuild your entire life after someone you trusted tried to tear it down, you know it's not just about the legal battles or the financial settlements. It's about reclaiming your sense of self-worth, your ability to trust your own judgment, your belief that you deserve better than being someone's consolation prize. The divorce was going to give me half of Marcus's assets. But what I really wanted was something money couldn't buy. I wanted him to understand that I was never the weak, desperate woman he thought he was manipulating. And I was about to get exactly that. 6 months after my wedding day turned into Marcus Coleman's public execution, I was sitting in a coffee shop in downtown Sacramento, reading the final divorce decree and feeling something I hadn't felt in a very long time, genuinely happy. The settlement had exceeded even Janet's aggressive predictions. Not only did I get half of Marcus's assets, including half his business, which had forced him to sell to buy me out, but the court had also awarded me spousal support for 2 years, citing the fraudulent nature of our marriage and his deliberate concealment of assets. Marcus had tried to fight it, claiming that our marriage was too brief to warrant such a significant settlement. But the evidence of his premeditation was overwhelming. The voice message alone had been damaging enough, but combined with the financial records, the communications with Valerie, and his consultation with divorce lawyers before our wedding, the judge had seen exactly what Marcus was, a manipulator who'd entered into marriage planning to commit fraud. The defendant clearly entered into this marriage contract under false pretenses, Judge Patricia Williams had said during the final hearing, with the admitted intention of dissolving the marriage at his convenience while hiding significant assets from his spouse. This court will not reward such calculated deception. Marcus had sat at the defendant's table looking like a man watching his entire world collapse in slow motion. Which, to be fair, he was. The business he'd built over 8 years was gone, sold to pay my settlement. The condo he'd been so proud of was gone too, also liquidated for my share of the assets. His investment portfolio, his savings accounts, his comfortable lifestyle, all of it restructured to account for the wife he'd thought he could use and discard. But the financial victory, satisfying as it was, wasn't what made me happiest as I sat in that coffee shop. What made me happy was the woman I'd become through this process. I wasn't the same person who'd put on her grandmother's wedding dress 6 months ago, believing she was marrying her soulmate. That woman had been sweet, trusting, eager to please. She'd been willing to shrink herself to fit into someone else's vision of who she should be. The woman I was now didn't shrink for anyone. With my settlement money, I'd quit the nonprofit job Marcus had mocked and started my own literacy foundation. Mitchell Foundation for Educational Opportunity was small but growing, focusing on providing writing workshops and mentorship for underprivileged kids who wanted to tell their stories. I'd also finished my novel. Not the romance about finding yourself after divorce. That felt too on the nose, but a thriller about a woman who discovers her perfect husband is planning her murder. It was dark, twisted, and probably a little too therapeutic, but my agent thought it had real commercial potential. "You write betrayal like someone who's lived it," she told me during our first meeting. "That authenticity is going to resonate with readers." I'd moved out of Jessica's spare room into a beautiful apartment downtown with huge windows and exposed brick walls. It wasn't as big as the condo I'd shared with Marcus, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every book, every coffee mug, all chosen by me for me, without having to consider anyone else's preferences. It was the first time I'd lived alone since college, and I'd forgotten how peaceful it could be. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Coffee tomorrow? I have updates on the Marcus situation." Even 6 months later, our friend group still occasionally provided intelligence on Marcus's post-divorce life. Not because I asked for it, but because his spectacular fall from grace had become something of a local legend and people couldn't resist sharing updates. From what I'd heard, he and Valerie had tried to make their relationship work after the divorce, but the financial pressure and public humiliation had been too much stress for their love to survive. Apparently, being with a man who'd lost half his net worth wasn't as attractive when she wasn't just the exciting mistress anymore. He'd moved back in with his parents in Modesto, was working at a mid-level marketing firm for a fraction of his previous salary, and, according to mutual acquaintances, had developed a drinking problem and a tendency to bore anyone who'd listen with stories about how his crazy ex-wife had destroyed his life. I felt a flicker of something that might have been pity, but it passed quickly. Marcus had made his choices. Every lie he'd told, every night he'd spent with Valerie while planning his future with me, every moment he'd let me believe I was loved when I was just being used, those had all been his choices. The consequences were just the bill coming due. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but something made me answer anyway. "Sarah? It's Emma." I hadn't spoken to Marcus's sister since the wedding. After everything that had happened, I'd assumed the Coleman family had closed ranks against me. "Emma," I said carefully, "this is unexpected. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, she said, and her voice sounded different, smaller, less confident than I remembered. But I needed to call you. I needed to apologize. I waited. I knew about Valerie, she continued. Not from the beginning, but for about 2 months before your wedding. Marcus told me because he needed someone to talk to and God, Sarah, I should have told you. I should have warned you. Yes, I said simply. You should have. I kept telling myself it wasn't my place, that maybe it was just a phase, that maybe he'd come to his senses before the wedding. But really, I was just being a coward. I didn't want to be the one to break up what looked like the perfect relationship. It wasn't a perfect relationship, Emma. It was a lie built on other lies. I know that now. And I know this probably doesn't matter to you anymore, but I want you to know that I think what you did at the wedding was brave. Marcus deserved what happened to him, and I'm ashamed that I helped him hurt you. I considered her words. Emma's apology didn't change anything. It didn't undo the months of deception or repair the trust that had been shattered. But it did feel like a kind of closure, acknowledgement from someone who'd witnessed Marcus's betrayal that I hadn't been crazy or vindictive. I'd been right. Thank you for calling, I said finally. I appreciate you saying that. For what it's worth, Emma added, you're better off without him. I love my brother, but what he did to you, that wasn't love. That was selfishness and cruelty, and you deserved so much better. After we hung up, I sat in the coffee shop for a while longer, watching people walk by on the busy street outside. Young couples holding hands, business people hurrying to meetings, parents chasing toddlers, all of them living their own complicated, messy, beautiful lives. A year ago, I'd thought my life was following a script: meet the perfect man, have the perfect wedding, build the perfect marriage, live happily ever after. The script had been torn up, dramatically and publicly, but what I discovered in its place was something much more valuable. I discovered that I didn't need someone else's love to validate my worth. I didn't need to shrink myself to fit into someone else's vision of who I should be. I didn't need to accept crumbs of affection from someone who saw me as temporary and disposable. I was worth more than that. I always had been. My phone buzzed with another text, this one from my literary agent. Publisher wants to meet next week. They're very interested in your book. This could be big, Sarah. I smiled, gathered my things, and headed home to my beautiful apartment with its huge windows and exposed brick walls. Home to my life, built entirely by my own choices, funded by my own success, shared with people who saw my true value. Marcus Coleman had thought he could use me and then discard me when something better came along. He'd thought I was weak, desperate, beneath him in every way that mattered. He'd been wrong about all of it. And now he got to live with the consequences of that mistake for the rest of his life, while I got to live with the knowledge that I was stronger, smarter, and more resilient than I'd ever imagined. If you've made it this far in my story, I want you to know something. If you're in a relationship where someone makes you feel like you should be grateful for their attention, where you're constantly trying to prove your worth, where you feel like you're settling for less than you deserve, trust that feeling. You are worth more than being someone's backup plan. You are worth more than conditional love. You are worth more than having to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's narrow vision of who you should be. And if someone tries to use you, manipulate you, or discard you when you become inconvenient, well, they might just discover that you're much more dangerous than they ever imagined. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here with me through every twist, every revelation, every moment of this journey. Your support means more to me than you know. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own strength, or if it just entertained you for the past hour, please hit that like button and subscribe. Share your own stories in the comments. I read every single one, and your experiences matter. Remember, you are not a victim of your circumstances. You are the architect of your comeback. Until next time, this is Sarah, reminding you that sometimes the best revenge is just living well, and sometimes it's a little more creative than that.